It was the dawn of 6th of April 1944, when the heavy engines of the B-17 Flying Fortress of the 8th Air Force thundered across the cold, grey skies of England. Stationed at RAF Molesworth in Cambridgeshire, the crew of Old Pegasus prepared for another deep penetration raid into the heart of Germany. Among them was Sergeant Jack "Mac" McAllister, tail gunner of the 381st Bombardment Group's 548th Squadron, a young man of 23, homesick, determined. Jack had grown up in Sacramento, California, born of humble farm stock, and had volunteered in 1942 when the war dragged him into the skies. In the tail turret of his Flying Fortress he stared, each mission at the vast expanse of air and the deadly silhouette of enemy fighters closing fast from astern. It was a lonely post, exposed in the little plexiglass bubble, vulnerable, a final line of defense for his 9 shipmates. On this morning, their target was the Messerschmitt assembly plant at Regensburg. Intelligence had reported new twin-engine fighters in production, and the Allies aimed to smash the facility before it could send fresh threats aloft. The bomber stream climbed through heavy clouds, the nose dial ticking hours and minutes until bombs away. Below them, flak bursts blossomed like black flowers, shrapnel and steel serrated the air. The fortress shuddered. Jack clenched his gloves and watched through the clear rear turret glass. Aboard Old Pegasus, something unusual had taken shape over the months preceding this mission. Mac and his engineer, Staff Sergeant Bill "Sparky" Pearson, had devised a system of mirrors, a crazy contraption some called it, to improve McAllister's rear-facing view. Traditional tail gunnery angles were limited by the narrow field of vision, by the fuselage framing and the shape of the plexiglass bubble. Mac's idea: mount a small periscope mirror system beneath the tail section framing, angled just so that he could see farther up and behind the airframe when fighters approached low and from the flanks. With Sparky's help, they scavenged a small optical mirror, rigged a mounting bracket in the cramped tail compartment, and ran wiring for a small light to illuminate the view in dusk or dawn missions. They had tested it. On one mission 2 weeks earlier, Mac claimed he knocked down a Messerschmitt Bf-109 that approached from the 6-0 anklock high inside angle. The verdict among the crew: bizarre, unconventional, but effective. Now, as Old Pegasus peeled away from the formation to avoid a flak burst, Mac activated the mirror system. The world inverted for a moment in the glass. The sky, the contrails of Allied bombers, and trailing behind, the dark underside of a Luftwaffe twin-engine fighter. Jack's heart pounded. He tracked the crosshair, his right index finger twitching on the trigger of twin 50-caliber Browning machine guns. He squeezed. Tracer fire lanced back at the intruder. The enemy plane veered off, smoking, and slid out of view. For Mac, this was the turning point. The mirror system, once whispered and laughed at in the squadron briefing room, had worked. As the fortress pushed on toward Regensburg, the formation thinned, losses mounting. The German fighters, Fu-190s and Bf-109s, darted in like shadows, men vicious and trained, desperate to stop the bombers. Old Pegasus took a strike in the left wing. Engine 2 sputtered and died. The pilot, Captain Richard "Dick" Hayes, held the fortress steady, breathing calmness into his crew's radios. "Keep her trimmed. We're getting home, boys." Below and behind the bomber, Mac's mirror flickered with clouds and tracer streaks. A green-painted FW-190 came in low, right flank, just 200 yards. Mac swung the turret, saw the fighter's cockpit silhouette, picked his moment. He fired. The bomber quivered as his rounds found the target. The fighter peeled away, wings wobbled, and then vanished into cloud cover. Later, over the North Sea on the return leg, Old Pegasus had to ditch one engine and drop altitude. The radio crackled. "Base, we are overweight. Shallow on fuel. ETA uncertain." Mac kept his eyes glued to that mirror system, scanning the blackness behind them. The mirror revealed the tail section underside, the vapor trail of an enemy night fighter closing in. Mac switched to full throttle, measured the field of fire, and when the German plane dived beneath and angled upward, Mac held his breath, squeezed the trigger, and saw the tracer ribbon soar upward into the night. The enemy craft stalled and fell away, burning. The crew cheered. Back at RAF Molesworth, the debriefing was electric. Flight engineer Sparky Pearson stood by the mirror system, proud but humble. Captain Hayes walked into the Tent Town airstrip gathering and nodded to Jack. "That mirror thing saved our arse today, McAllister. Good work." The squadron man in charge raised a glass of whiskey in the mess and toasted, "To the craziest rearview mirror in the air war, and to its gunner." In the weeks that followed, the mirror system went squadron-wide. Mac trained other tail gunners in the field of view improvements, the mounting, the exact angle to view the upward flank. Within 2 months, the squadron documented that tail gunner kill claims rose by nearly threefold compared to the prior quarter. Enemies approaching from low and fast, once the most vulnerable angle, were now being repelled, surprising them with fire they thought wouldn't reach. Meanwhile, Mac's letters home to his younger sister Brenda described the long nights of waiting at the turret, the loneliness, the roar of engines, the scent of burnt oil, the shaken jaw and tense muscles. He wrote about the mirror glinting silver in dawn light, the fear of being the lone man in a bubble at the end of the bomber, and the strange comfort of that odd contraption, giving him that extra glimpse of death coming behind. Then came 18th of July, 1944. The mission. A daylight strike on the oil refineries at Misburg near Hanover. Old Pegasus was limping with 3 engines but still in formation. Flak was heavy, fighters vicious. During the approach, the tail section took a hit, plexiglass shattered, instruments sparking. Mac, shaken but steady, climbed into the tail turret, the atmosphere cramped, fumes of hydraulic fluid surrounding him. He flicked the mirror system and saw something he would never forget, a lone Messer twin-engine night fighter sneaking in low behind them, its cockpit glinting under the belly lights of the bomber. He whispered, "Here she comes," and opened fire. The fighter erupted in flame, spiraling downward. The shockwave rattled the tail boom, and Mac's goggles cracked. He held on. Through the shattered dome, he watched bits of his own plexiglass rain into the slipstream. His turret helmet communicator crackled. Mac, are you okay?" He answered softly, "I'm fine. That mirror saved us again." Old Pegasus made the 1,200-mile round trip home on just 2 engines, limping back into Molesworth at dusk. The crew climbed out, exhausted, silent, some wounded. Jack stepped down from the turret and stared at the broken mirror mount, bent but intact. He touched the tiny mirror glass and remembered the flight path, the tracer lines, the roar, the fear, the resolve. That evening, the squadron gathered and toasted them, not because the mission was easy, but because they came home when many did not. Months later, November 1944, as Allied forces pushed into Germany and the bomber offensive redoubled, Mac prepared for his 30th mission. He had become a mentor. Tail gunners from 2 other squadrons came to see his mirror rig. They laughed at it at first. "What's that kitchen mirror doing on a bomber?" But after seeing the results, they installed their own. On the mission to Berlin's synthetic fuel plants, Mac's mirror caught an Me-262 jet coming from behind and below, something tail gunners rarely saw in time. He fired a short burst. Fragments of the jet cap exploded behind the formation, disrupting the attack. The bomber group emerged with fewer losses than expected. By the time the war in Europe neared its end, Mac's mirror had become legend. The 381st Bomber Group maintained a modest record of tail kill effectiveness improved, and the crews of Old Pegasus remembered the nights when the sky glowed, when tracer streams cut arcs of fire, when they leaned on each other's bravery. The mirror system, crazy though it seemed, became part of their survival story. On May 7, 1945, as the German surrender was announced, Mac sat in the tail turret for the final time on a farewell flight over the English countryside. The sun set behind him, the mirror glinted golden in the light. He reflected on what he had seen, the loss of comrades, the roar of B-17's wingtip to wingtip, the terrifying flank attack, and above all, the resilience of crew, of machine, of innovation. When he climbed out of that turret for the last time, he carried more than a uniform and a service resume. He carried memory of nights where his mirror caught death creeping in, and of the moments he returned fire and lived to tell it. In later years, Mac would join reunions of the old bomber boys at the Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio. He would show the tiny bracket, the cracked mirror, and say quietly, "The war wasn't won by fancy aircraft alone. It was won by men who looked one more time, saw the shadow behind, and fought back." His story stands as a tribute to all those tail gunners who stared into the black, into that trailing sky, and held steady. And when you next look up at a vintage bomber, remember the tail gunner in his little bubble, the mirror glinting behind him, and the courage of one man who said, "I will see them before they see me." Fade out.